once again welcome everyone in our webinar on how to comply with DORA in identity management area. So let me introduce myself. My name is Tomasz Mielnicki. I'm the consultant, architect, auditor, expert in digital identity, but also taking care of DORA-related matters, DORA compliance, and other cybersecurity-related topics. So today's agenda. Oh, you can't hear us. Let's check if you can hear us. Okay. Thanks, Alunas, for confirming. So maybe it's just a problem of your headphones. For other people, just make sure they are activated, turned on. So let's continue. The agenda covers DORA introduction and requirements area, especially, of course, in respect to identity management and access management, access control, and to discuss and map the requirements. We will also explain the various types of identity and access management solutions so that we can link them to the requirements or try to interpret them and find out what's right. And some practical tips and comments about how to manage this to fulfill requirements of DORA in this area. So first of all, DORA has 4 major areas of requirements. So one of them is the ICT risk management. The other one is ICT related incident management. The other one is resilience testing, so penetration testing and so on. And the fourth one is managing of ICT third-party risks. So these are the main areas which are of our interest. There are some little other more legal related or notifications like supervisory related parts of DORA, which we are not looking at today. So actually, we will be talking about the part which is referred as ICT risk management, because all the topics related to identity and access management, this is actually covered in this part, ICT risk management, and requirements are there. If we look at the risk management framework and the legal framework, there are a number of articles in DORA regulation which covers, first of all, governance and organization, so how the risk management framework is organized, and what is the role of the management board and the highest level of management in this area. Then we have the ICT risk management framework, how it should look like. Then we have the chapters about the ICT systems, protocols, and tooling, how we should treat them, how we should manage them. Then we have the very important chapter which refers to identifications, Article 8, and this is one of the key points for managing identity and access management. This is about finding out what kind of systems and ICT resources we have, and what is their classification, what's their level of criticality, how important they are, so that we can then, based on the risk assessment, see what kind of tools possibly might be needed, or what kind of technical or organizational solutions can help to meet the requirements of DORA. But that the identification is the base of any discussions. Then we have the protection and prevention, Article 9. We have Article 10 about the detection of anomalies and incidents. We have the articles about continuity business continuity and backup and recovery stuff. Then we have about learning and evolving, a part which refers to how organization learns from own experience, from incidents, to improve its operational resilience. And then we have about the communication internal and external to stakeholders, for instance, when incidents occur. And so this is the basic part of the regulation. And then there are the implementing acts called RTS or ITS, which in our case, it's RTS about the risk management framework, which provides detailed information and detailed requirements on how to manage the risk, including the identity management and access control. So the main, the Article 6 explains actually what ICT risk management framework includes. So it says about strategies, policies, procedures, ICT protocols, and tools. So this is the things that should be at least used by an entity to manage the risk, to create the risk management framework. But actually, if we take it what it means in practice, so it boils down actually to two things. You need to, first of all, to prepare a set of documentation which contain strategies, policies, procedures, and then some kind of IT tools which can realize protocols and automated systems to help manage the risk in the organization. So let's go next. So then in that context, what is this identity and access management? Let's quickly remind what it is, so that we can discuss that further in scope of the particular requirements. So identity and access management is a set of policies, procedures, tools for creating and managing digital identities, human and non-human identities, as well as access to resources like applications, IT systems, data as well. So that's the generic term. But quite often, if we talk about IAM, which also stands for Identity and Access Management, that actually denotes a kind of technical solution, which usually is a software, but sometimes can be a hardware as well, used to implement identity and access management processes. So before going into details, what are the different types of IAM tools? So the basic functions of these tools is, first of all, storing the identities, along with some information about the identities like attributes, maybe roles, permissions. Then doing some automations around identity management. For instance, when someone changes the role or leaves the organization, we need to do something, and this kind of tools can do this automatically. It also allows to manage the actual access to IT resources by provisioning accounts and permissions, and also making the authentication of the user before granting an access, and as well as enforce the policies. For instance, policies that can refer to roles, so role-based access control, maybe segregation of duties, least privilege, and so forth. So we can set these kind of policies, and then the IAM tool can enforce them in practice. The tools can also eliminate some excessive privileges or conflict of interest. It's actually, again, something around policies that we can apply. And the other functionality is around password management, password policies, password complexity, and enforcing, like setting up regular changes or complexity of the passwords. And as well as it can provide some information to the management, to business managers, like information on entity security posture, indicating of areas of non-compliance, and can provide some additional information, management information, which we call sometimes governance features, governance or higher level of kind of supervisory features. So not only for the administrators, technicians, but something that is for the managers. So let's go quickly through specific kinds, because this is important to understand the meaning of DORA requirements. So first of all, the major components or solutions that you can actually see in the market, quite often, IAM is not a single solution. You can buy components which are focused on some specific areas, and that's why we are making this kind of distinction. So first of all, we have the identity management, historically called IAM or IDM, but today it's usually part of IAM kind of solution, kind of product, generic IAM. So it's a product or element of IAM that stores and manages identities. Then we speak about access management, AM, or usually it's again called today just a part of IAM, a standard regular IAM solution. So, but it's a component that manages the access, actual access to resources. It authenticates and allows you to log in to some accounts or systems. Then we have multi-factor authentications or just authentication. Usually access management or IAM products, they do have some internal access management authentication features to realize the access, but you can see in the market also a standalone external multi-factor authentication solutions, especially for customer authentication. So we have companies that specialize just in this piece for authentication. They excel in this part. Then we can speak about single sign-on. It's not really a product. It's a feature of usually of the access management product, but it's the mechanism for one-time authentication, logging in, giving an access to many independent resources. Then we have the password management. Again, password management is usually a part of regular IAM products, but you can also see in the market a specific standalone password management product, especially where you really don't maybe need to have the regular IAM, or you have some other solutions, maybe just identity management, and you want to have additionally password management. You can also see this kind of product just to manage the password, just to release the help desk in resetting passwords or enforcing policies. The next category is privileged access management. It's a specific product category to protect accounts with elevated privileges. It's sometimes called privileged password management, especially for critical resources, for administrative accounts where any misuse of the account or privileges can lead to significant losses. The other type of solutions, relatively new, is identity governance and administrations. An acronym is IGA, or sometimes just IG, identity governance. That's the tool that provides specific features for the management, higher management, to provide framework to set up the policies over the whole organization and all IT resources related, for instance, to the regulations and policies that are coming out from regulations or standards. You can set up these kind of rules globally in an organization and also set some approvals and reviews. You have some dashboards to see the level of compliance or risk area. So that's the set of tools called identity governance and administration. That's the acronym. Then we can speak about the local privilege management, because when you use the IAM tool, it manages the access to the applications and systems. But when a user uses the personal computer or personal device, there are specific tools to manage the local privileges, local administrator rights, for instance, to limit the use of administrators' privileges for the regular users. That's called local privilege management, but it's also usually a part of endpoint management solutions. Then we have a specific kind of tools which do not have acronym, and sometimes it's quite difficult to understand what they are for, but it's called AD, meaning Active Directory Delegation or Active Directory Management. This is a specific type of tool focused just to protect Active Directory. Active Directory is quite an important system. It's also Active Directory by itself. It's an identity and access management system, but for the Microsoft environment. And it's quite very commonly used. So there are specific kind of tools just to focus on to securing and enforcing some policies on top of the Active Directory, something that natively Active Directory does not support. And the last type that I mentioned is Customer Identity and Access Management. This is actually usually it provides the same very similar set of features like regular IAM kind of products. But the IAM, it's more focused on workforce identity, so the employees, the internal workers, access to internal resources. While Customer Identity and Access Management, that's a kind of IAM product, but dedicated to clients, customers, external users that access to some publicly available services of an organization. And for this kind of products, it's usually important, for instance, to have a improved user experience in this case. So we have specific vendors focusing on specializing just in this CIAM kind of product category. All right, so let's sum up what's the relation between these various components. First of all, of course, we may have no any IAM solution, but like 90% of companies, they usually use Active Directory or Azure Active Directory, which is today called Entra ID. That's a very, very common scenario. Almost every company use Active Directory or Azure Active Directory Entra ID. But that's for one Windows environment. You can enhance the environment to cover other applications. You can introduce kind of additional IAM access, IAM solution to manage the workforce access to various resources. But then if you have some resources, which, as I said, are exposed publicly for maybe external users, meaning customers, you may want to use your own or some other third-party authentication, which provides some specific features, maybe not supported by the regular platforms. Then you can introduce CIAM. It's a quite usual scenario when you have, for instance, some e-commerce sites or kind of e-banking services. You may have e-payments, you may have 3D Secure. So for 3D Secure, you may have your own best-in-class authentication just to speed up the authentication. But then you may have the portal to access by the same customer. So you may want to combine authentication for 3D Secure or payments with authentication to other use cases. So that's where the CIAM may come with a good opportunity, for instance, to integrate external or third-party MFA solutions to meet the business goals, for instance, user experience. And on top of it, or in addition to that, now for the internal users, administrators, we call them privileged users. You may introduce privileged access management, PAM solution that is used to protect administrative access to various components inside the organization. And the similar one, it's a Active Directory Management tooling presented before. And on top of it, you can have IGA solution that supervises or sets the policies for all accesses, all access rights, including workforce, privileged users and customers as well. You can govern all this, set the rules, approvals, and policies. Okay, so now we can go back to DORA requirements, and we will go through the specific requirements to see what they write inside the text and what it means or what it may mean, how to interpret, because sometimes it's not really straightforward if you don't know the tooling, the technology that might be behind of the authors of the legal text finally. So first of all, we have Article 6, which sets some general requirements, like financial entities minimize the impact of ICT risks by deploying appropriate strategies, policies, procedures, ICT protocols, and tools. So at this stage, that's what we've said already. And these tools or the framework, they shall provide complete and updated information on ICT risks. So first of all, there is a need to have some kind of tooling, not necessarily technical tools, but at this with this article, just to have some generic, some kind of ways to gather to get the updated information on ICT risk. And of course, identity management and identity management related issues, it's just a part of the whole environment, but of course it's a part of it. So you can use, you don't have to at this stage with this article. It does not mandate to implement anything yet, at least. But there are tooling helping to get the updated information on the risk. We will actually explain this later on. Then we have Article 9, which mandates actually that the financial entities should develop and document an information security policy. So that's a document, right? Again, no any tools are required, but actually IAM solutions, these are the tooling to realize information security policies in practice. Let's go next. Article 9, another part of Article 9, it refers to establishing a sound network and infrastructure management. So here you need to manage your network, but also the infrastructure as a whole, using techniques, methods, and protocols, and may include automated mechanisms. So here we are stepping further. It's just to talk about really technical solutions that actually maybe should be actually, or may include, but it's getting more obvious that we may need this kind of tooling. So this chapter primarily concerns network elements, right? We can interpret this way. However, network elements, these are also the ICT resources. They usually have also, accounts where a user, maybe administrator, can log in and do something, can have privileges. And IAM solutions can also protect access to this kind of elements, especially if you have network devices where you have root account. And this network element can be quite critical one. So as you will learn later on, you actually must protect these kind of elements as well with a PAM-like solution or IAM solution, or also detect risky activities in real time, maybe alerts, send alerts or inform security officers. So but using any kind of technical tooling, IAM tooling to protect them, it's not a must, but you need to run a risk analysis to decide actually whether any tool is necessary or maybe not, especially if you're a smaller organization. It's maybe less likely you will need this, but for bigger ones, probably more likely. If we go next, Article 9 says further that actually you must implement policies that limit physical or logical access to information assets and ICT assets, right? And it says about to limit the access to what is required for legitimate and approved functions, and activities, approved functions and approved activities only. So how do we interpret? Actually, this boils down to well-known policies like least privilege policy in terms of the access management, need to know policy, need to use policy. So these are quite known ones, where you just provide the access rights, privileges inside the systems, just the minimum needed to perform the job or activities. And of course, the set of various IAM tools can help in this. We will speak about that later. But this chapter also speaks about sound administration. It's just like doing something, but it must be a sound kind of properly done, which may mean that in more complex organizations, actually doing this without tooling might be very, very difficult. Then we have Article 9, still Article 9, but speaking about strong authentication. And it says directly, you need to implement not only policies, but also protocols for strong authentication mechanisms. So it's directly, it's a direct requirement of use of technical solutions for strong authentication or multi-factor authentication. So to do this, actually, for not all the resources, you may need the strong authentication. So to decide to which resources you really need strong authentication or you don't need, you just run, first of all, classifications for the Article 8, and you also run the risk assessment to see actually which resources, which systems, which applications you need to protect. So not all of them, maybe, right? And multi-factor authentication, it's quite often a native feature of many applications or systems, but you can also implement a centralized solution, because if you have more application systems, then it becomes difficult to manage, to implement these policies in practice manually. It's possible, but it becomes difficult. So here we can use access management, the privileged access management kind of tools, products, or CIAM for external users if you have the applications or services exposed for the external customers. Then the Article 10 instead speaks about user activity monitoring. So if you read this one, it's very generic. It speaks about the occurrence of ICT anomalies, ICT-related incidents, in particular cyber attacks. Nothing about digital identity, but actually, if you know how the attacks, what are the types of the attacks, most of them actually refers to digital identity. It's about taking over a digital identity and or gaining elevated privileges. So you take over the account, you get the privileges like root privileges or administrative privileges to do some harmful things, to do some ransomware attacks and so forth. So it's really, this article does not only speaks about digital identity, but digital identity is an important part of these requirements to how we can interpret it. And this is the prominent to say that monitoring users in this context without automated tools is really, really difficult, because what are the anomalies? It can be takeover of the account. The user can log in properly, can authenticate properly, so everything looks fine, but it can be an attack. So there are tools to detect, and these tools are quite sophisticated, so it's hard to do the same things manually. So without that tooling, detecting many attacks related to digital identity, it's really, really difficult. So I would say it's not a question if you need the automated tools to detect such anomalies, but how to do that, what tools to choose that maybe are sufficient for your use cases. So it can be an access management, it can be a privileged, especially privileged access management to monitor critical resources, because that's where the risk is the highest. And the PAM solution, for instance, they proxy the sessions, they proxy the access to critical resources. That's what they are designed for. So when a user, which can be an internal user, or which can do the harm unintentionally, or the attacker that took over the account of an administrator, But then you can use like for instance, artificial intelligence and some analysis, behavioral analysis to detect anomalies and to see whether it's an incident, it's a cyber attack, or not really. This is something that can privileged access management solutions do. It's practically impossible to do that manually by a human without such a tool. Next, we have Article 12 that actually it mandates. It's really straightforward. The ICT system shall be securely protected from any unauthorized access. So again, it says about not if, but how to do that rather, because it's mandated. They must be protected from the unauthorized access. That was over with the main regulation text. Now we have RTS, which extends and details the requirements in this area. So it mandates specifying the segregation of duties. So in the policy, in the security policy or information security policy, you need to define, you need to mandate use of segregation of duties, and you need to also define how you do that. So segregation of duty aims to avoid conflict of interest. So you can have an administrator, an auditor, for instance, and you must not give the same permissions, the same access rights to systems for the people with these roles. So you need to separate that. So segregation of duties is mandatory. And again, manual segregation of duty, SOD policy enforcement is hardly possible. So you can set on various systems various privileges according to segregation of duties, but then to enforce it, if this is not changed in the meantime by someone else, and it's how this is in practice, it's really difficult to achieve without the tooling. One question, Tomasz, is everything fine? Can you hear me well or see? Can you just confirm verbally? Okay, I think everything's fine. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely fine.
Okay, great. So here we can have, for segregation of duties, can set of tools, IIM tools, PAM tools, especially for critical resources, but also IGA tools for bigger organizations, where you can implement segregation of duties policies and supervise them, monitor, govern, not only implement, but really follow if they are followed. And Article 20, it speaks about identity management, and I think it's the first requirement, strict requirements that mandates financial entities to implement identity management. If you look at the previous requirements, there was not such a direct requirement to have identity management. There were requirements about access management, yes, but not really with the identity management itself. So first of all, DORA requires unique identification of each natural person, but also systems accessing, so non-human identities, accessing your resources, financial entities, resources, information. So first of all, you have to manage the identity. So this clause mandates implementation of identity management procedures, which should ensure unique identification of each user. So then if you take, for example, systems, maybe network devices, but maybe some servers which are Linux based, and you have the root account, it's very, very common to have shared accounts there. And with this requirement, actually, you must have unique identification when accessing also shared accounts. So you need to have actually accountability of who is accessing shared accounts. And this makes practically obligatory use of PAM solution. That's one of the consequences of DORA. In my opinion, PAM solution is really mandatory for every entity which has a couple of systems with shared accounts. So unique identity, unique user accounts, each staff member, it's including third parties as well, should be uniquely identified. Then continuing, RTS Article 20, it actually mandates creating a registry of identities. So you need to have the identity database at least, because you need to have all the identities registered. You need to have all the assignments registered, like what kind of accounts they use on what systems and what are their privileges in these systems and accounts. So basically identity, and you need to manage also life cycle. That's a very important second thing, life cycle. So not only to register, but you need to regularly, without undue delay, you need to follow the changes, with the assignments, follow the changes with the roles, and add or revoke permissions. You need to do this on the accounts. It's very, very often commonly happening that permissions are granted. You can ask by email, for instance, an administrator to add permissions, but then no one remembers to revoke the permissions. And it's very hard to follow on which systems this kind of accounts or permissions still exist for a user that maybe changed the role or left the organization. So, and these are the typical features of IGA solutions. That's where you can really automate this and follow the identity management lifecycle, manage the lifecycle. So you need to have the registry, you need to manage the lifecycle, and in practice, it mandates use of kind of IGA solution. In my opinion, this, because even with a dozen systems, more than few systems, it becomes quite difficult to do all this. So for medium-large organization, I would say it's necessary to use that kind of tools, especially where the Article 20 says also that financial entities shall, where feasible and appropriate, deploy automated solutions for the lifecycle management of the identity. So what's the appropriate case? To me, if you have more than few systems, it might be appropriate case already, because it's really hard to make this manually. Article 21 speaks about access control policies. Again, it confirms the need to implement policies like need to know, need to use, least privilege, including remote and emergency access. So it mentions also remote and emergency access. And this is something, again, you can try to do manually, but especially for critical systems, you might be better to use PAM system. And otherwise, it's difficult to secure and follow the rules. Then Article 21, very important one. It speaks about shared accounts. It mandates actually user accountability. That's what I said already. Like limiting to extent possible use of generic and shared user accounts. So you should avoid accounts which are shared, like admin, login admin, and used by many people. But sometimes it's not possible. So how to manage this? You strictly need to have means for accountability for all accounts, all shared accounts. That's something where actually, to me, it's a quite strict and hard requirement to do this manually, especially if you have Unix, Linux kind of systems and shared accounts. Sometimes you're used very occasionally, so not really supervised. So PAM solutions, probably that's the only way to do this with a kind of sound control. And the next clause, again, in the Article 21, presented here in bottom, actually, it says that you should have policies that restrict access on ICT assets, setting out controls and tools. So actually, it mandates using some kind of tools. You need to have something that prevent unauthorized access. Okay, you can have manual procedures and tools being a piece of paper, but that's probably may do maybe for very small organization, micro enterprises, but even medium and quite often small enterprises, it's really hard to do that. So it imposes use of some kind of tools. Maybe the question is which one to choose, but you need to use them. Access governance, that's what I've said already. You need to manage the generic administrator accounts and all accounts actually, and you need to review the access rights periodically. You need to review that and revoke access rights when they are not needed anymore. So again, it strengthens the requirement to have the access management being reviewed and revoked. Don't forget about revoking. So here, like privileged access management solution or IGA solutions, that's something that can do this. And these provisions of Article 21, I would say they enforce use a PAM solution. To me, it's finally coming there obligatory to have some kind of solution. Further, Article 21 also talks about withdrawal of access right. That's what I said, with undue delay. So, and with some kind of automated tools maybe, and update of access rights. So here we have strict requirement. At least once a year for all IT systems, you need to review all the access rights and confirm if they are correct. This is called recertification or sometimes attestation process, but you need to do this periodically, once a year at least for all systems, and every 6 months for critical or important systems. So you need to do this regularly. That's the new thing that is mandated compared to other regulatory environments or previous regulatory environments for financial institutions. Now it's mandatory also for small enterprises, small medium ones. Not only big banks manage to do that; they used to have it, but small medium organizations, it's not that often to have IGA solution. So I would say that it's very difficult to do this without IGA solution, but for smaller organization, maybe a so-called IGA light products could do the things. Maybe could be a good fit. Then we have the Article 21 confirming the need of use strong authentication, and actually it mandates to have strong authentication or MFA for critical systems, for remote access, privileged access, and publicly accessible systems. So not all of them in the entity, but now we have answered that at least for these kind of systems, resources, IT resources, you must implement strong authentication. You must. There is no way to do the other way. Then there is also article about physical access, and actually it's not a typical thing to discuss with the ICT environment. You need to actually do the same things like granting and revoking access right, but physical access to premises, for instance, or data centers. But actually, if you have IGA solution, the best-in-class solutions also allow you to integrate with the physical access control systems and manage the same way the access to physical areas, spaces. Then the Article 23 talks about detecting anomalous activities. That's what I've said already, but it mandates to have mechanisms to promptly detect anomalous activities and behavior, and implement tools generating alerts. So again, that's what I've commented already, but especially for critical systems and privileged users, privileged accounts, the only way to monitor and detect anomalous activities is using a PAM solution, and PAM solution can also see the risky operations and send notifications or even terminate the sessions. But actually, DORA mandates using this kind of tooling to me. So if we can summarize all the requirements, there are strong DORA requirements for the identity management, especially the life cycle, which is kind of a new thing that now mandates all the financial entities. segregation of duties and other policies to be followed, reviewing and updating permissions, including revoking, protection of privileged accounts, as well as remote and emergency access, and implement accountability for all shared accounts, strong authentication, and monitoring and detecting unusual activities. And this kind of unusual activities also apply to identity and access management scope. So we can summarize that it's practically obligatory to use of some tools. So first of all, strong authentication, MFA for critical systems, privileged accounts, remote and emergency access. That's where it's mandatory. Privileged access protection for shared accounts, at least for shared accounts. And IGA in larger organization, medium or large organizations, that's, to me, it's an applicable use case, because when you have more than few systems and more than few users, it's really hard to govern the access as DORA requires. So that's the vital question then. Can you meet identity and access management requirements of DORA without IAM tools?
Excuse me, Tomasz. There's a question. Sorry, there's a question from Arunas. Can you list suggested tool solutions to comply with DORA requirements on IAM?
Yes,
please.
Yes, of course. So that's a very good question. I will comment this while I'll be speaking with this maybe slide. So first of all, most of the requirements can be theoretically met without specialized tool. Most of them, with the exceptions I've mentioned, like PAM solution. So PAM solution is mandatory, and there are multiple vendors. Actually, I have a slide on that. So if you wouldn't mind, I will continue, and you will learn the answer. But it depends on the size of the organizations to use or not to use, and the risk calculations. Yeah, in large organizations, it's difficult to implement rights management. That's what I mentioned. And in large organization, it will be also difficult to respond quickly and effectively. Actually, if we go back to Article 6.1, it mentions that you need to set the risk management framework which quickly and effectively can respond. So obviously for big organization might be challenging. Managing privileged access is virtually impossible without tooling. That's what I've said. So you need to have some tools, in my opinion, at least. And the questions are, should ICT resources be protected? How to choose the tools? How to apply the principle of proportionality? So the methodology I proposed, first of all, you need to run identification and classification. So Article 8 tells about how to do that. Then you run the risk assessment. You need to identify threats, risk scenarios, attack scenarios, business impact assessment, and see what tools do I need tools to comply, first of all, and do I need the tools to mitigate the risks? And then if you say, no, maybe I can do without tools, then you can use just some procedures, documents to do this manually. But if the answer is yes, you need to acquire and deploy. And then that's the question, what kind of tools? Because there are tools for small entities and there are tools for medium and large entities. And that's a very good question. So if we speak about regular IAM tools, there are well-known solutions by, for instance, Okta, by OneLogin, Keycloak, ForgeRock, Ping Identity. There is a number of them. That's the basic IAM tools. Then if we speak about the privileged access management tools, then there are well-known like CyberArk tools, but also multiple other solutions. One Identity, privileged access management, you have Wallix, you have Fudo, you have Broadcom. It's a huge number of various solutions. The question is actually, some of them are better for big and complex organizations, some of them are better for small organizations. So you need to choose which the best for your case, just not to spend too much on them. If we speak about the IGA, identity governance solution, so the most prominent providers, this is like Omada, like One Identity Manager, and some few other, but not that many. But actually, there are big solutions for big companies. So today there are smaller ones being developed, so-called IGA Lite solutions. Also, for instance, by One Identity, for instance. And then if you speak about the ID management, there are tools like, again, One Identity, but also Manage Engine and some few others that can manage Active Directory. So these were the main ones. Maybe I will comment further. Yeah, so the product options. Traditionally, IGA products are intended for large organizations, and they are very expensive, complex, and difficult to implement. While DORA actually forces existence of kind of IGA Lite products for smaller organizations. So these kind of products are being developed by few companies, like One Identity, like Intragen, or maybe other. At the same time, traditional IAM products like Okta, like OneLogin, they are being extended with some simplified IGA solutions. So that's the other options. You could maybe the simplified IGA solution or IAM solution with some IGA functions, basic ones, might be sufficient. Depends on the size of the organization and all the requirements, number of systems, kind of environment. But you need to know that, for instance, the traditional IAM products, the most common now, like Okta, for instance, or OneLogin, they're just SaaS products, and not every organization is happy about that. So you may need to maybe alternative solutions like open source Keycloak. It's IAM product, but without IGA functions, or maybe some other that are still kind of on premise. So there's a number of questions open. For PAM, there is a really huge choice in the market. You can have products for each and every size of organization. Everyone will find something. At the same time, if you have IGA, you may need to have integration with PAM, because actually PAM, it realizes partially the same kind of functionality, but just for the privileged accounts. So you may want to make IGA and PAM solution to work together. So that's another factor when choosing the right solutions. Maybe to unify the access request and approval process. At the same time, if you have just a Microsoft-based environment, you've got some IAM tools in the package, like Active Directory. It's one of the tools, or Azure or Entra ID. They have some built-in features that might be sufficient in some cases, so you need to check if this is okay for you. Like AWS or Azure, if you're only in this kind of public cloud environment, there are built-in IAM, MFA, and PAM tools already there, but of course they have some limitations, so they don't fit to each organization. So you may need to extend. So you need to remember that if you finally decide not to acquire IAM tooling, it may happen, but you need to have some justification based on risk analysis, maybe based on the proportionality principle, or maybe just it's not feasible, or it's not the appropriate case. But you need to have a justification why you didn't implement this kind of tooling. You have something else, you have procedures. Then, but if you, at the same time, if you implement some IAM tools, then don't forget the IAM systems becoming a ICT resource that you need to manage under the risk management framework in the same way like some other. And if the IAM tool is a SaaS tool, online one, the provider of this tool becomes a ICT third-party provider that you need to also manage by DORA rules. And the last comment, what about external identity and authentication systems, EID schemes, and so forth? Yeah, it happens that you have the public EIDs, external identification and authentication systems in the processes related to customers' processes, quite often in e-banking or e-commerce use cases. You can use it as a part of or not of a CIAM solution, but you can use something external tooling to access your portal, for instance, for your customers. If the EID is used only for identification, for instance, in the onboarding process, that's actually not an element of identity and access management according to DORA requirements. But it is an ICT resource and falls under the risk management framework. But if you use the EID scheme, for instance, bank ID or other kind of digital identity wallet, if it's used for authentication, like accessing your portal or application for your customers, this is an element of an identity and access management in accordance to DORA. You need to treat it like this. And at the same time, of course, it can help meet DORA requirements. So if you have strong authentication, users authenticated, accessing some remote access, actually, you remember there is a requirement for the remote access to your resources. You need to use strong authentication. So if it's based on EID, that's fine. If the external EID provider is a private entity and there is no obligations to use the EID, that's the case, for instance, in Poland, not in Poland, it can be in somewhere else, then it's a third-party ICT service provider. So you need to register it, you need to have a contract. But like in Poland, we have the external identity provider, which is a public entity, and the use of EID, in Polish case, it's a Polish identity wallet, mObywatel, and the use of it is mandatory for entities, like for banks. Then you just, such a supplier, it's not a third-party ICT provider under DORA. So this is a bunch of some additional information, how to treat the external systems. And that concludes our webinar. If you want to learn more, you can refer to our publications, which are available on our website, or just write an email to me. We can share the information. And do you have any other questions? We can still answer them. If not, just write to us if you want to. So thank you for the meeting. The recording of this webinar will be also made available at chat. And if you think you may need some kind of assistance related to DORA, we can also provide, as Identitonic, related to compliance, assistance to fulfill, maybe documentation and advisory around identity and access management, how to make it, as well as training. So feel free to contact us. If there is no questions, thank you very much for your time and see you next time in our webinars. Thank you. Bye-bye.